What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Southern Life. Several law enforcement agencies in Florida have stopped publishing their arrest booking logs because it opens up the potential for people to be scammed. However, their actions have created an even bigger problem. Criminals in these counties are now pretending to be ICE immigration agents, making kidnapping type detentions, facilitating extortions and robberies, with the family members not being able to detect whether these people that are being arrested are legitimately being arrested by a government agency or if they're being kidnapped by criminals. Already in one county in Florida that is not publishing arrest records at the moment, Martin County, we saw one individual arrested for pretending to be an ICE agent trying to conduct a traffic stop in a rural community. It isn't by chance that people are doing these types of crimes in counties where there's very little public information available about ICE and immigration detentions. It certainly isn't happening in places that have good transparency. Law enforcement agencies in Florida are now able to make ICE and immigration detention arrests. There's a lot of benefits, even to those people who are living illegally in the United States, of having a local law enforcement agency make these detentions versus having ICE and other federal agencies make these arrests. For one, when your arrest of ICE detention is conducted by a local law enforcement agency, one that has transparency, like for example the Sarasota Sheriff's Office or the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office, when they make an ICE immigration detention, you're able to have access to the information of who's being detained, why, where. All the information related to their arrests is public records and available. However, in South Central Florida, many of these rural counties have practically zero public accountability, with some of these counties, like Hardee County, for example, not even publishing the arrest records for their county. We've already seen arrests in Florida of people pretending to be ICE immigration agents trying to make detentions in rural communities of people. Luckily for these individuals, they decided to flee and call 911 with their quick thinking. They were able to avert what could have very easily been a robbery or kidnapping. Currently, the Martin County's booking website is down. When a county doesn't have accountability for arrest, it opens the window for criminals to take advantage of the fear in the community and harass people who are both U.S. citizens and illegals. And with the notion of fear of detentions and, of course, the lack of transparency from these agencies, criminals are able to take advantage of ICE and immigration detention fear to harass and even kidnap and rob individuals. On today's video, we're going to review what's going on in South Central Florida, an area where there's very little transparency when it comes to arrests. Now, the state of Florida does allow local law enforcement agencies to make these arrests. And while it seems like that's kind of crazy, a lot of people push back on that in Florida. The reality is, if you are undocumented, you are so much better off getting arrested in process by your local law enforcement agency than you are by one of these mysterious government agencies which have no transparency, no information, and many criminals are pretending to be these agencies to carry out kidnappings, robberies, with the pretext of having very little information available to the public and the notion of public fear. You may have seen our series on immigration and ICE arrests in the coastal communities, but today we're going to switch it up a little bit and head into South Central rural Florida and see what's going on with immigration arrests in the rural communities of South Florida, the inland counties. A little less coastal, a little bit more rural, the country areas of South Florida. Now, each county in Florida compiles their arrest information differently, and these small rural counties don't exactly make it easy like the urban counties do to decipher whether somebody is going to get that deportation order or not. So we're just going to have to read between the lines and try to figure out what's going on with these arrests, because the way that these rural counties compile information about their arrest logs varies a little bit from what we're used to along the coastline. So let's get into this. For example, this woman out of DeSoto County, that's the Arcadia area, was arrested and being held for another agency. Could it be another county or could it be ICE? We'll never know. And by the way, here's a quick map of South Florida counties in case you're wondering the areas we're going to be talking about today. Meet the little homie Diego from Clewiston, Florida. Now, he was arrested and he has an onslaught of criminal charges. The Henry County Sheriff's Office is charging him with DUI twice, resisting an officer, possession of contraband and substances, false report, and grand theft. But he's not being charged with no valid driver's license. At first glance, he might appear to be undocumented, but not everybody that's Hispanic is illegal or doesn't have a valid driver's license. With charges like grand theft and, of course, possession of illegal substances, the homie definitely isn't a little angel, but at the same time, he probably may not be here illegally since he wasn't arrested for any charge like an ICE deportation hold or no valid driver's license. If he's a U.S. citizen, he's not deportable. If he's a permanent resident that has a valid driver's license and is caught committing a DUI, it's possible that in the future he could see a deportation hold. However, most of the time when we see somebody that has this many criminal charges, they're usually going to be legally in the United States. People who are here illegally rarely break the law on this scale. I'm going to guess by the severity of his crimes that he's likely legally in the United States. If he was illegal, he would probably just being arrested for something like not having a valid driver's license or jaywalking or something like that. This Hispanic male in DeSoto County was charged with murder. However, they don't provide any information on citizenship status, so we don't know if he's legal or not. On top of that, some of these smaller counties like Hardee, they don't even publish their arrest records, so there's no telling what's going on. I'm going to guess that in the inland rural counties, many of the immigration arrests are being made by Border Patrol themselves or ICE agencies directly and are not ending up in the local county records like they are in the urban area. So when it comes to trying to understand what's going on with immigration arrests in South Central Florida, it's really a huge question mark. For example, this woman right here was arrested in Charlotte County, Florida. She's listed as a citizen of Russia and born in Russia, so we know she's not a U.S. citizen. It makes an easier determination on whether somebody could face an ICE deportation. On top of that, Charlotte County would also list if somebody has a hold for ICE. But when it comes to these rural counties, they just don't give too much information, making the determination a little bit more difficult just by looking at the arrest logs.
Firstly, how's your day going so far, Jose?
Yeah, but I speak English and I can't understand you. We're doing a recorded line here for a YouTube video. If you could just speak English so I can understand you, because I couldn't understand a dang thing you say down there.
Mr. Jose, this is Melody Bashir on the phone. I'm calling you on behalf of Intercontinental Hotels.
Okay.
The reason of the call, sir, is firstly we want to thank you for being a, yeah?
You're calling me from a hotel?
Yeah, I'm calling on behalf of IAG Hotels and the Holiday Inn Band family. The reason of the call, Mr. Jose, is we firstly want to thank you for being a loyal IAG One Rewards member. And since you've stayed at one of IAG hotels, we would like to ask you a quick 5-question survey to enhance your future travel needs.
This is
also an opportunity for you.
I'm currently making a YouTube video about immigration arrests. I'm kind of on the clock right now, so I really don't have time for your survey, ma'am. But can I ask you a few questions? Can I ask you a few questions?
Go ahead. If may I help you?
Are you living in the United States right now? Are you in the United States?
One more time, sir?
Are you in the United States of America?
No, sir.
You're not a U.S. citizen? If you are,
may I help you with anything?
well, you're calling me. May you help me? You're calling me, telling me you're not even an American. They're putting our jobs in other countries and taking good jobs from hard-working Americans. My people, my goodness, no, man. They took our jobs. These illegal robots from the future are taking a dang job. They took my job.
I'm so sorry, sir, if I've bothered you. I look forward to help you with the future child Raymond.
I don't need help with child bringing. I'm an American.
Okay, I'm so sorry if I've bothered you. Have a great day, sir.
All right, ma'am. This man right here in Henry County, Florida, that's the LaBelle and Clewiston area, was arrested for having his driver's license expired for more than 6 months and an out-of-county warrant. That warrant could be for an ICE detention. We just don't know because they don't specify. Now, what's interesting is that his bail for no valid driver's license is set at $5,000. I think that's a little excessive. So when it comes to Henry County, Florida, they are very harsh when it comes to arrest. And I don't know if it's making their county a better place, But at the end of the day, most of the people that are getting arrested in rural Henry County, sometimes they don't have 1 or 2 criminal charges like we do here along the coast. These guys are getting genned up on 7, 10, 15 criminal charges. Sometimes they'll have as many as 3 or 4 criminal enhancements. Now, criminal enhancements kind of are a tack onto a crime. For example, if you're within 1,000 feet of a school, you get a criminal enhancement. So it seems like they really like to put people underneath the building in Henry County, Florida, and they arrest somebody. Now, these enhancements are actually additional criminal charges, and each additional charge comes with an additional bail. They really are sucking the life out of people who they arrest in these rural counties. Even with harsher penalties and more enhancements, when they arrest people in these rural areas, they seem to have an onslaught of criminal charges that they're not getting in the city. For example, this nice young man right here that was arrested in Henry County, Florida, they gave him the enhancement of using a two-way communication device in a commission of a crime. Basically, this is a criminal enhancement. Most of the time when people are dealing with selling type possession charges, they're doing that. Leave it to Henry County, Florida to make that a criminal enhancement. So what does he do? He flees. Now, if he was getting caught in the city, he probably wouldn't flee from law enforcement. But because he knows how harsh they're going to come down on him in this little rural county, he flees. When he flees, he makes it a now public safety concern. Law enforcement being so harsh created a dangerous situation for the officers, for the public, and for the individual being arrested. It seems like all it does is create a more dangerous and more polarizing scenario for people who are breaking the law. If this individual had been in an urban county with the same exact charges, he probably wouldn't have fled. Now, I've lived in urban and rural counties in the South, and in rural counties in the South, many times criminals flee automatically because they know that law enforcement will be merciless on them, and it creates kind of a more dangerous situation for the public. Now, here in the city of Sarasota, we're running a Hugs for Thugs program. We'll hold their hand gently and put them in a police car with air conditioner, put on some local music that he likes, and escort him gently to an arrest log record place where a beautiful white woman in a thong will log him into the arrest logs down there at the county, put him in a jail cell with his buddies down there, and make sure he's comfortable with his friends to make sure that his arrest experience is as comfortable as possible. That's how you get return business right there. Now, this young man here with a Lehigh Acres address was arrested in Henry County for a failure to appear. I think we kind of understand that this individual is probably facing a deportation order. That's why he's afraid to show up in court. This young man is almost certainly a Guatemalan, and with his age demographic, he's almost certain to get that deportation order. Mr. Mejia is from Lehigh Acres, Florida, and he was arrested in Henry County for no valid driver's license. First offense of operating a motor vehicle with no valid driver's license. Now, a lot of people who are U.S. citizens are arrested for this charge, but he is Hispanic. Most people his age aren't going to get arrested for no valid driver's license. I'm going to assume that this individual is likely going to face a deportation order. Henry County, Florida, Central American, 25 years old. Look at his criminal charges, guys. Doesn't it seem like they're charging him twice for the same exact thing? Both charges have a $5,000 bail. This doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It becomes redundant the way these rural counties in South Central Florida move. It's like they have no respect for due process or rule of law. They do whatever they want in these court systems. Anywhere else in Florida, you're not going to charge somebody 2 times for doing the same exact thing. These are 2 different charges for doing the same exact thing. Nowhere else in Florida could a court system be so deprived that it's able to get away with doing something like this. And at the end of the day, it's the same situation. He just doesn't have a valid driver's license. He probably will get deported, but then they want to charge him twice with an excessive bail, a $5,000 bail for a driver's license charge. Then they charge him twice to get $10,000 out of him. So if he does bail out, they're getting $10,000 out of him for not having a valid driver's license. It's excessive, it's redundant, and it's illegal. But these courts in these rural places do whatever they want. They don't understand how law works. They do whatever they want in their court system. So this is a prime example of how these little rural counties operate. They don't care. They do things that are clearly wrong. I can tell you right now, just by looking at the combination of these two charges and the bails that are attached to them, that this is an absolute abnormality. But at the end of the day, that's the way they get down in these rural counties. If he got arrested here in Sarasota County, he would have a driver's license charge and an ICE immigration hold. But that's not how they get down in these rural counties. They want to milk $10,000 out of him before ICE gets a hold of him. Or they may want to send him to court a few times, put him on probation, violate his probation, and then deport him. It's an excessive amount of law enforcement hours. It makes no sense why they do these things. Or even better yet, some of these other counties, they won't even give him a bail. They'll just, in 15 days before he goes to court, give him the ICE immigration hold, and he'll be deported. But again, these small rural counties, they do whatever they want. You can see how inept they are just by looking at the way they process arrests. They are brutes and incompetent. This is not the way the law in this country works. Now, if these rural counties like LaBelle were safe places to live, it would almost be excusable if the results were productive. But the results are that their communities are dangerous. When you look through these arrest logs and see how many people are being charged with murders, how many people have 10 and 15 charges, these are career criminals in small rural communities. So it isn't like there is, like if there was like good results to show for their incompetent work, then it would be excusable. But there isn't. That's the thing about it. Like if this method of law enforcement worked and was productive, it would make sense, and you'd be like, okay, well, we're going to overlook all their lacks of due process and all their inept behaviors because they're having good results. But they're not. These rural communities are plagued with criminals. It would almost be excusable if it worked, but it doesn't. Then you look at DeSoto County, where 12% of their population is black, but on their most recent date, 50% of the arrests were black. Now, interestingly enough, in DeSoto County, the Hispanic population is less likely than the whites to be arrested by percentage, which makes absolutely no sense. The only logical conclusion that I could come up with is that most likely when people are getting caught without a valid driver's license in DeSoto County, they're probably bribing their way out of that situation. Or perhaps the Hispanic population in rural DeSoto County is less propense to crime than everybody else, which is a possibility, but it's probably unlikely. It's also possible that because so many of the Hispanics in DeSoto County are undocumented, that they just go to work and stay out of the way, draw very little attention, and that law enforcement just kind of looks the other way because they're not the core of the crime problem. Because you also have to consider that if the core of your crime problem is the American native-born population, and they're going after these people heavily, even giving them extra enhancements when they get arrested. In other words, law enforcement is actively trying to bury people who are criminals in their community. It doesn't make sense for law enforcement to focus on like small crimes like not having a valid driver's license. It could also be that the system here is to catch somebody without a valid driver's license, and instead of law enforcement making a detention, send them off to the court system where the courts are the ones that make that determination. That's definitely a possibility here as well. And that's probably because most detentions are of males, and you live in a community where people could have 3 or 4 kids. So if they're in a family unit, then law enforcement may not just want to apprehend and arrest somebody when they got a wife and kids back home that they have to feed, and the kids could be U.S. citizens. So it's most likely something that's being handled within the court systems and not by law enforcement themselves. And these are all assumptions, and there's nothing wrong with that. I recently had somebody on a video angry at me. You're making all these assumptions and you don't know. Do you think that for a YouTube video, I have the time to pull records on every single one of these persons from the court? It would take a month to create a YouTube video. We just kind of have to generalize and just understand the general idea of what's going on. I think right now what people just want is just to get a general idea of what's happening with the legality situation. So we don't need a definite answer. We're just trying to get an idea of what's going on in our communities. It doesn't have to be precise. We're just getting an idea of what's going on here. On top of that, Arcadia is kind of a compact city, and many of the people that work in agriculture, they have those buses that pick them up and transport them, and they even transport them to the grocery store. So there's not a lot of incentive for somebody to drive without a valid driver's license. So in the case of a place like Arcadia, the people that are undocumented may just simply not have to drive without a valid driver's license. Basically, everything they need is in their small community, and the companies that hire them provide transport. So there's no real reason for somebody in Arcadia who's working for agriculture and has all those services available to them to end up getting caught with a driver's license offense. Whereas somebody who's undocumented and living in a suburb or in a major core of an urban area, they may be more prompted to have to do the driving. Like, look at this house right here. See how they got two of those vans right there? So in these rural communities, the employers provide transportation. Thus, the people that live in these areas, they don't have to drive without a valid driver's license. So it's kind of set up so that these individuals don't have to do that. So that's kind of the difference between somebody living in a small town based off agriculture, where they can pick up 20 people in a neighborhood, versus in a city or a suburb particularly, where definitely you have to commute. Henry County, Florida, another Hispanic male facing a homicide charge. It's pretty evident that crime is out of control in these rural counties, and some of the most violent crimes that happen in Florida take place in these rural areas. I would almost be certain this guy is a U.S. citizen as well. We're going to skip on going through the arrest records for Okeechobee County. This is all they post. It looks like a kindergartner learning how to use bookkeeping software. In Glades County, Florida, a man with a Miami address is listed as having an ICE hold. I believe he's Cuban. Highlands County, which is the Sebring area, has one Hispanic with federal charges. A lot of times these lead to deportations. Very few Hispanics get arrested in Highlands County. I'm not sure what the case is again, but that's just the way it is here. And the information that Highlands County provides for their arrest is very primitive regardless. Now, Hardee County, Florida, when you go to their website and click the arrest logs, you get this PDF with 2 arrests from 2024. This is absolutely pathetic. On top of that, on the day that I filmed this footage, I drove through Hardee County and they were making a lot of straight up profiling type detentions on the side of the road. There's some sinister stuff happening in Hardee County, Florida. The day that I went there, they were pulling people over. The police officer must have been 7 foot tall. It's the biggest hick I've ever seen. He was literally pulling people over, grabbing them, and taking them out of their cars if they looked like they were Hispanic. I don't know what's going on in Hardee County, Florida, but I can guarantee you it's a mess. The fact that they don't publish their arrest records and just sitting there on the side of the road and watching this 7 foot cop grab people, take them out of a car. There's no due process, nothing. These guys are just giant freaking brutes, grabbing people, pulling them over, getting them out of their cars. It's absolutely wild what's happening in Hardee County, Florida, and that's the rural community of Wauchula. So I don't know what's going on there, but it doesn't look good. And they're doing this like on a bend of a curve where it's like 60 miles an hour and there's nowhere to pull over. So you can drive by and see it real quick, but you can't like stop and record them. So it's like on this little rural curve that there is on the highway, they're sitting there pulling people over, and the passing cars can just barely get a glimpse of what's going on. If you were trying to stop or detain yourself to look at what's going on, they would know you're trying to watch them. So it was very, how would I say this? It wouldn't be a logical place for law enforcement to pull somebody over because it's a little dangerous. So it's one of those scenarios where like they know what they're doing, they know how they're doing it, they know how they're moving, and Hardee County, Florida, terrifying what's going on there. They're basically just pulling over work trucks that are taking that turn, making them pull over, and if you drive by, you might get a quick little glance at what they're doing, but you're not going to see the whole thing. It's kind of a very unique place to detain somebody, pull them over, and not have to worry about people seeing what's going on. These guys are as fat as football players and as tall as basketball players. These are monsters of police officers they got out there. It would be terrifying for somebody to get pulled over in the middle of nowhere on the curb on the side of a road with one of these police officers with an agency that doesn't even publish their arrest releases. It doesn't look good in Hardee County. And the community in Hardee County does want to see the arrest records. There's been several petitions online and people talking about it, trying to get the sheriff to provide more information of arrests. The community wants this transparency. They can't get it. So if you're thinking about moving to Florida, just know that Hardee County, Florida is a unique place with unique circumstances, and perhaps that isn't the type of unique position you want to put yourself into if you're moving down here. I think most of us would want to move to a place where we understand what's happening in the community, not where it's a complete secret who's getting arrested, how many people are getting arrested, the demographics of the people that are getting arrested, the crimes that are being committed in our community. Most people would probably want to know all of that information just for our safety and just to be aware of what's going on in our communities. Some places provide this information, some places don't. Indiantown, Florida is in Martin County. It's a rural community by Lake Okeechobee. This guy right here was arrested for pretending to be an ICE immigration agent. The people were detained by him. They became afraid and fled from the guy. They felt he wasn't a real immigration agent. They called the police, who found out that certainly the guy was not a real ICE immigration agent. So we now have people in South Florida who are pretending to be ICE immigration agents on country roads in the backwoods, detaining people and most likely robbing them or doing who knows what the crap to them. This is a huge concern for the Hispanic community in rural areas because of the lack of transparency of these law enforcement agencies. So again, if these law enforcement agencies recorded their bookings and arrests and we could see it, the community could know if something is legitimate or illegitimate. But when you live in one of these counties where nothing exists, nothing's in the air, right now the Martin County Sheriff's website is completely offline. You can't look up anything. You used to be able to look up their arrest records. As of now, the whole thing is down. You can't look up anything. So when you have these little backwood communities where they do whatever they want, there's no transparency, there's no formality, there's just nothing. They do whatever the crap they want when it comes to arresting people. You have situations like this where this guy pretends to be an ICE immigration agent somewhere out in Indiantown on a country road, tries to detain somebody. The people flee for fear, call 911, only to find out that the guy really wasn't a real immigration agent. He was probably looking to rob them. And the guy that did it is a Hispanic himself, most likely an illegal himself, taking advantage of the situation that his own people are facing. So it's situations like this that prompt people in the community to be in fear. You're on this country road, you get pulled over by a vehicle. The guy says he's an immigration agent, but he doesn't seem like he's an immigration agent. The people fled. Now, their act of fleeing could have gotten them arrested if they were in fact real agents. But again, when you're dealing with informality, when you're dealing with unskilled people, when you're dealing with unprofessionalism, when you're dealing with just completely incompetent people with no transparency, it leads to a situation like this individual here pretending to be an ICE agent, probably looking to rob people on country roads. So in these rural communities, people who are breaking the law flee from law enforcement, and people who are not breaking the law are also fleeing from law enforcement because they're either afraid of the brutality of these individuals or the legitimacy of these people, since again, you're in a place with no transparency, absolutely no documentation, no public information. In these rural communities in Florida, people are afraid. You get pulled over by somebody pretending to be an ICE agent. How do you know if they're really an ICE agent? You really don't. And this is what people in South Florida are afraid of. Situations like this guy right here, pretending to be an ICE agent when all he is most likely a thief, a carjacker, who knows what. Perhaps he could have kidnapped them. There's no telling what could have happened with this situation. And this is the type of things that are happening right now because law enforcement agencies are not proactive, are not professional, are not transparent. It's leading to situations where people in the community who are doing nothing wrong are in fear. And it's creating opportunities for people to exploit those fears, like this criminal right here, taking advantage of the uncertainty of the legal situation of the time to take advantage of people, hurting people, kidnapping people. These are the vulnerabilities that people in these rural communities in South Florida are facing because of how inept law enforcement has become at doing their job properly when it isn't even that hard to do it. Most likely the reason why they're not doing things accordingly is because there are some informalities in how they're working, which is again a public safety concern. Simply because they want to do things outside the box, they have no transparency, and it leaves the public in fear, and it creates dangerous situations where somebody may even flee from law enforcement agencies that's doing a legitimate operation simply because they are afraid, they are uncertain. They can't trust law enforcement. It is a horrible situation what's going on in South Central Florida. These rural counties have a complete freaking mess. And at the end of the day, there's nobody regulating them, telling them how they have to do things accordingly. They can do things the way they want. And the way they want to do things is a public safety freaking hazard. These areas also lead people into believing misinformation. Like a while back, there was reports of immigration raids happening in a bunch of these rural counties because they don't publish the arrest. There's nothing to know. People don't know if they're actually legitimately going door to door and making immigration arrests, or if the individuals who are being arrested are being targeted. For example, here in the Sarasota area, a lot of people have been arrested. We know they're being arrested because they previously got arrested on something, they got released, they got the deportation hold, and now they're going back with a warrant to arrest these individuals with an ICE deportation hold. There's no fear of the community that people are knocking down doors, coming in with warrants and arresting people. No, we know exactly what is happening because every single day the local sheriff's office provides us with information on who's being arrested and why. And there's no need to speculate on anything. We know that the people that are getting arrested in Sarasota are people who break the law, they get arrested, maybe they get released, and then they get the warrant and they kick door and get a detention for ICE. But there's no mystery of why it happened. It's all public records and accessible to the public immediately. Like this Peruvian woman who was just arrested in Sarasota, the sheriff's office has provided us a mugshot of her. I think somebody made a little clerical mistake when they processed this one here. But at the end of the day, all the information is there. We know she's born in Peru, but she's a U.S. citizen. So it helps the public understand that this person here, they're not deportable. Yeah, they were born in Peru, but no, they are a U.S. citizen. They're not deportable. There's no need to speculate. And this arrest happened just a few hours ago today, so this is prompt information. As soon as they detained this person, they showed us a photo of her. Arrested in Sarasota, a Salvadorian. His charges, he's being held for ICE and immigration. You click on it, you can see the guy's photo, you can see all his information. He's a Salvadorian, he's not a U.S. citizen, he's getting deported. All the information that you need to know about this immigration arrest is available. Thus, the community is able to know who's being arrested and why and what is the nature of these arrests. Thus, the community doesn't speculate whether we see somebody getting their door kicked down. Is it an immigration raid or whatever? Or are they just going door to door? The community doesn't have to speculate nothing. It's all public records. We know why this guy got arrested. We know he's Salvadorian. We know where he was at. There's no reason for the community to speculate anything because every single day we're understanding who's being arrested and why. So in the case of law enforcement in Florida making these ICE detention arrests, it's almost preferable that a local law enforcement agency that publishes it to a website does these arrests, so at least the people in the community can understand exactly what the crap is going on. Because when we don't know what's going on, it creates uncertainty, it creates danger, it creates situations where people out of fear have to flee from law enforcement because you got criminals pretending to make ICE detentions. It creates a lot of uncertainty and fear in the communities. And after all, we are in the United States, a country of law and order and of due process, so that's the way things should work.